In April 2008, when NATO said Ukraine would become part of NATO, and the Russians made it clear that that was an existential threat and that was unacceptable to them, we should have backed off right then. Should have done nothing more. Then the crisis broke out on February 22nd, 2014. We should have recognized the severity of the situation, and we should have backed off and worked with the Russians to create some sort of modus vivendi where the Russians felt that they weren't threatened by NATO in Ukraine and that Ukraine could remain a neutral state. But instead what we did was we doubled down, okay? Then over the course of 2021, right, the situation deteriorated, right? And on December 17th, 2021, the Russians sent a letter to NATO and to President Biden demanding that they get in writing that Ukraine would not become part of NATO. What we should have done then is backed off and tried to work out some sort of modus vivendi where the Russians were satisfied with the situation in Ukraine, right? And the threat of war was taken off the table. Instead, we told the Russians, nothing is going to change. We are going to bring Ukraine into NATO. And we were working very hard to do that, despite the conventional wisdom in the West, which says we were not. We were working to bring Ukraine into NATO.
So what options are available in this post-conflict period or mid-conflict period? What are the realistic options now?
There are no realistic options. We're screwed.
I mean, what does that mean practically, though, we're screwed? It means you believe the conflict is now destined to escalate or just destined to grind on?
Well, both. It's destined to grind on, and both sides will continue to escalate. They have been escalating. And where it all leads is very hard to say. There's no deal on the table that can be worked out here. There's all this talk about the need for diplomacy. And I think diplomacy is a very important element of foreign policy, and many American policymakers seem to have forgotten that. And many people in the West now equate diplomacy with appeasement, which is remarkably foolish. So I'm in favor of diplomacy in principle. But the question you have to ask yourself in this particular case is, if you do diplomacy, can you work out a deal? And my opinion is there's no deal to be worked out, and both sides are going to fight this one out.